always print you a budget. I mean, where that's called, agenda.
Oh, I was like, budget?
Hi.
Good.
What?
I was gonna say, we can be reviewing the last one.
No. Are you okay with me paying you once a month for bills?
Yeah,
I just,
that's fine.
I just keep track of them. And I just
That's
tell,
good.
I just tell
Perfect.
Bushy, bring it over, he brings it, and I make a little note on my refrigerator.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, and it worked well too when we brought like 3 or 4, so we might do that at some point, but,
That's
it's
awesome.
just been,
Yeah.
like, I thought I wouldn't be hectic this time of year, but here we are.
Yeah, they're starting their babies already, so they
That's what
eat so much when they're back on these calories. And when it's cold like this too, it gets extra cold, they eat a lot.
Sorry,
It's been
slow
going.
down the progress a little bit.
Yeah, if
A
it works
lot,
out
depending
like
on your
3 or 4 days, that's
perception.
super easy, because I can muscle them in. Steve's just coming in from the office.
It's 5 o'clock.
I hope he is.
Now they're printing the last thing.
I'll give it another minute.
Yeah.
Andrew was like the nicest kid. I stood and looked out my computer, I'm like, texting. Shut my halfway up my gas, my oil fill. He goes, oh yeah, just for oil fill. I'm like, well, that's what
Did you?
I'm
I'll check it. I changed my phone all of a sudden.
I keep him fed though, so it probably is a good payoff.
That's what
I
he
know,
said.
right? Huh? It's just, no, it's
No,
just
yeah.
like, got a new number. There was an 800 number available. I don't know if there's a bunch of them with that prefix on it or not, I don't know. Yeah.
We'll need a special.
You know what, my phone never rings anymore.
There you go.
Since I'm done work pretty much.
You can give us your number, we'll give you a call.
Yeah, I
Feel-
bet,
make you
huh?
feel-
Everybody would like to have it. Just for someone to talk to, right?
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, I'm only.
Forgive me.
we need
That
to-
easy? Yeah.
We need to look at the grant you guys put on, or just?
Are we going into non-public or you possibly
No,
Wednesday, Sunday.
Yeah.
Going to non-public first?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry?
Are you going to
Okay, so
non-public
this
or
is,
you?
it's only got a few.
No,
little
there's no
things,
non-public.
so we can
Is the
look at
budget
them.
hearing at 5 or 6?
5.
Okay. It being,
Well, I don't have Zoom up yet.
never mind.
Okay.
We'll wait another
Can you
minute.
just wait one more minute?
No, it's fine.
Sorry.
What else would we be doing?
It's Monday, I'm all off schedule.
So if you got a pile of gravel that got dug in the fall and it's frozen solid, your excavator still to get that?
Depends.
But like, no.
Yeah. No.
I'm supposed to, I shouldn't say this on the record. I have 2 sheep who have a lung disorder that they were gonna euthanize. And Chris put his backhoe over, dug the grave for them, and then never came back and filled it. I kept on saying, can we do it now? Can we do it now?
Okay,
And
yeah, no,
never
it
filled
could be something that we could probably,
No, we
probably
can-
figure something
We
out.
can do it.
That's so sad.
I know that
I can even
it's
bring all
sad,
the
it's a
sand
lung
and
thing that
all
they
that
get.
Where?
Oh, you know what? I'm realizing we don't have our.
They're very sweet.
Oh, here we go. We can start it, even though it's not.
I don't think that's not plugged in, is it?
I thought it didn't make a noise yet.
Maybe it is?
I think we're good. Okay, thanks, folks. Sorry about that. We're good.
It being just after 5 p.m., I call the select board meeting to order. Changes or additions to the agenda, none. We're
No.
just gonna move right into new business. Energy committee update with Gabrielle.
Alright, thank you for putting me on your agenda, and I apologize for rushing, so I'm taking my jacket off yet. So I have 2 things that I wanted to let the board know about. Well, one is let the board know about, and therefore the town, to do with our community power program. And then the other one is to talk a little bit about EV chargers, because I know there were some questions at the last meeting when the warrant article came up. So just here to answer any questions, but also sort of clarify where we are with that project and what we're thinking about it. I think I'll start with EV chargers. So we had a unanimous vote, I forget when it was, maybe over the summer, to go ahead and apply for, or participate in a federal grant that New Hampshire DOT was putting in to get charging stations put in areas like ours that are sort of remote and don't have any access to charging. And the idea there being that it's an economic development initiative because it'll draw tourists in from other places, but also benefit people in town who want to get affordable EVs but don't necessarily have the ability to charge, either they're renters or they haven't been able to put a charger at their home. So that grant was approved by US DOT, and so that would cover 80% of the charging costs. The other 20% would be covered by a grant from the Tamworth Foundation, which has been secured but is contingent on a federal grant. So we have all the funds in hand, theoretically. However, with the funding freeze that was announced last week, everything is quite uncertain about whether that money will ever materialize or not. I've been trying to figure out what's the best way to proceed on this, and I think we should just proceed as if we will eventually get those funds, and if we don't, then we'll have to think about next year, go to town meeting with a separate warrant article for some other kind of configuration to do that. TCNA did lay conduit towards the back right end of the parking lot, so the costs of putting them in is significantly lower than they would have been if we had to do that trenching and lay conduit ourselves. Anyway, so that's where we are with the project. In terms of parking spaces, the proposal's for 4 spots, one of which needs to be handicap accessible, and so my thinking and my proposal at this point is to use one of the handicap accessible, the 2 spots that are, thanks to the TCNA parking lot project, there's 2 regulation van-sized handicap spaces near the entrance to the TCNA building, so we would put a charging station on one of those. So whoever used that would have to be both have a sticker for handicap and be an EV, but if one of those spots was taken by somebody with a handicap sticker, the other car that was there would not have to be an EV, but you could use that spot if you were handicapped, needing the handicap spot. That's sounding a little confusing, but I hope that makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 spots would be, again, at the far end of the parking lot. Like any electric vehicle parking space, they're signed, hey, this is for electric cars to charge. Sometimes the language is EV charging only, or EVs only, or EV charging. There's like various ways that they get signed, but they're always signed that way so that people know if they don't have an electric car, they're not supposed to park there. That's the understanding. But we have days in the summertime when every single parking spot in town is like at a premium because the farmer's market is going on, or we have a barnstormers event going on, and people are like circling looking for parking spaces. So what my thinking is on this is that, parking enforcement can be rigid or it can be flexible depending on what the town's needs are. And curious about how that might work, I spoke with Chief Littlefield today, and he said, that proposal that I just articulated sounds sensible to him, but what he would like to see is that there be explicit language written into the road regulation, I think it is, which is not an ordinance per se, but it is a regulation under an RSA that, road regulations that the town has. And there's a bit of language in there about parking in different places, how it's supposed to be in the village, how it's supposed to be in different parts of town. So we already have some language in there, and it would be a matter of adding additional language to clarify, this is priority electric vehicle parking. The police department would be directed to be flexible in their enforcement during peak demand times, such as the farmer's market or barnstormers event, when parking is at a premium in the village area. And so that would allow the chief and his staff to be both fair in terms of how they enforce that regulation, but also have a written regulation that's guiding them. It's not just them sort of arbitrarily doing things. So that's in response to the question about losing critical spaces in the village, which I really appreciate.
And it went to 4 from 2 because that was a requirement of the grant.
That's
that we
correct.
didn't know about when we first approved 2.
I don't remember the conversation when we applied for the grant, but the grant was always gonna require the 4.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I just remember our conversations around
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
yep. So, and with the 13 additional spaces, you know, you subtract 4 from 13, what's that? My math's terrible, it's 7, so you still have 7 additional spaces than what you had before. 9, see, I told you. So, I do not have a math degree. All right, so that's that. Any other questions around the electric vehicle charging?
So more or less, to kind of summarize that a little bit, it sounds like obviously if there was like a whole bunch of other parking opportunities, then it may be enforceable if you were parked in a EP only spot. But if the village was completely full, there's no other parking spots, probably somewhat acceptable to park there versus maybe parking in a handicap spot, we'll say.
Right.
I mean,
Correct.
Which was
That's probably.
Yeah.
which would be illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not just Tamworth
So
that
there-
says that, yeah.
Yes,
that's-
no, I understand that, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying like,
I think
it's
it's
not quite like,
not as
like a
rigid.
grade.
It's a
Sounds like
last
it depends
it's a last
how we
resort.
write it, or how it's written.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, so I have a listserv, I'm gonna put out a request for other towns, how have you guys written your ordinances, and see, find out, hopefully get some small towns like us, you know, that look like us, and see how they've handled it. So, cause I think we can be flexible and common sense about it. The chief's main concern is that it be fair, so that there's that sense of everybody's being treated the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably very few days of the year that it would come into play. I mean, during the summer, it's only gonna be
A couple
Or
hours.
sort of-
Saturdays,
nights
yeah.
Saturdays.
Peak. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Community power.
Community power, so, up until now, community power has been the cheapest source of power in the, state since their inception, but they just made a decision after, a specially called board meeting, that they're gonna need to raise their rates slightly, and it's gonna be slightly above the Eversource rate. So this is, an unfortunate, situation for community power, but it's necessary for them because they set their rates based on paying for the energy that they need to procure to meet the demand that they're servicing, and also build some rate stabilization capability so that when there are wild fluctuations in energy costs, their rates don't go up dramatically, that they can keep them sort of on an even keel. And so that's what's going on. The reason why this happened, and they initially had set their rates to slightly below Eversource, but they were entering into a contract with a large energy supplier, the Burgess Power Plant up in Berlin. And for some reason that I'm not aware of, that fell through, so they needed to go out onto the market and buy that 30% of power at a time when we've been having cold weather and power prices are really high. So it was disappointing because Community Power Coalition was excited to be supporting the Burgess Power Plant and giving them a customer and a long-term contract. That may still happen at some point, I don't know. But it's also disappointing for us as customers because that means that if you're with Community Power, now your rate's gonna be slightly higher than Eversource. Whereas we've been saving your average household $11 a month for the last rate period that's just about to end now in February. That is no longer going to be the case. So just as a reminder to everybody, you're able to opt out and then opt back in at any time with Community Power. It's free, there's no charge, and so people should just consider what they're going to do. I know I'm gonna stay with Community Power because our barn has very low electricity demand, it's not a lot of money for us. even though we're buying a slightly higher amount of renewables energy from community power, but it's not gonna be a big financial hit for us. I wish I had figures on what an average household is gonna be paying per month more than Eversource, but I wasn't able to get that information before coming before you today. The only other thing I wanted to two other things to call attention to. One is the chart that you see with the big line trending down shows in gray what the utilities have been charging since the inception of community power. And then the dotted dark line is what the community power rate has been up until now. It doesn't include the new rate, this is an old chart. But what you see is that the utilities have been dramatically lowering the price that they're charging for electricity since the community power program was initiated in New Hampshire, which is competition works, right? That's the big story right there. And so it's a positive thing for everybody, whether you're with Eversource or with community power, prices are coming down, and so that's a good story for everyone. One of the reasons why utility prices are coming down is just energy on the market has come down in that period to some degree, but also there's some non-competitive practices that the Public Utilities Commission is allowing the utilities to engage in. And so the Community Power Coalition is working with legislators to sponsor a bill that would instruct the Public Utilities Commission to reverse decisions that it's made that allow utilities to engage in non-competitive practices. And so, in a nutshell, the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, has said, hey utilities, you've been buying your energy once every 6 months in the past. Now I want you to go out onto the spot market and buy your energy, 30% of your energy, I want you to buy it on the spot market, exposing yourself to more risk of fluctuating energy costs. But if at the end of the rate period you have lost money, don't worry, because you can go back to every single customer in your service area, whether you service them or not. So community power customers would be paying for this. You can recoup your losses from everybody. And the reason why that's bad for us is because we're not taking any of that risk. That's the utilities taking the risk. We're already hedging our risks with community power. And the PUC is allowing utilities to come after us and recover money from us, even though we're not with them anymore, for those customers who've, left and gone to community power. So there's a bill that I'd like to request the select board, and I apologize, I should have had it drafted now, but send a letter to our representatives saying that we support this bill, House Bill 760, to stop utility cost shift to community power. Questions?
I had a couple things on the earlier news, and I first want to say that this is not directed at you at all. I understand it's community power. You're the messenger. But I believe that we were either guaranteed or told that emphatically that the prices would always be lower than Eversource's for community power. And that stands out to me as one of the reasons that I was on board with the idea of helping everyone get to a pretty much guaranteed lower rate. There's an opt-out only, right? Stuff happens.
Yeah.
I get it. They can't maybe do anything about that now, but my ask...
And I just want to correct, they didn't guarantee it, they said our intent is going to be. Yeah.
Fair enough, and I acquiesced to
But
that.
that was definitely a selling point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
The bigger point of concern for me is that the community power plan was that it's an opt-out, you can opt out, otherwise you're getting this. And now, everyone that didn't opt out of the original sign-on is going to have to go physically do something to get out of it, to get back to the lower rate. And I think that community power, if they're going to, they pulled us in, and I think they should push us back out if that's what is, they're now changing and they're no longer going to be the lower cost and should allow an un-opt-out feature. So if
I hear what you're saying, and I can bring that feedback to them.
Please.
I don't know that the enabling legislation allows that the way it's written. So,
The
but
legislation that
that
allowed the
enabled-
opt-out,
enabled the standing up of the program,
okay.
yeah, from 2019.
So along that line, I think about technology, and some people don't have access to technology. For some people, it's befuddling, even, like, where would I even find this so that I could opt out? So does the Energy Committee have, or can you create pretty easily, some little quarter sheet that you can have at the library, or have here, or put on the website under the Energy Commission tab?
Yep.
Just remind people, this is how you opt out, this is how you opt in 3 steps each way.
Yeah.
And if, the librarians are aware about this, they can, a lot of people use the library as their resource for,
Yeah, who don't
Internet.
have computers, yeah.
so it might be great just to give them a heads up so that they can facilitate. I mean, people may or may not choose to, but it would be, I think that's the way we can,
I think we have to support
I
them.
think that's the way we can support people who decide to, for whom that $11 a month is really gonna be important.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they come up with like a small card, like they did the last time that we've had here at the town offices and at the library. If they don't, this letter basically says the whole thing, and there's the phone number at the bottom and the website that, you can go into or call. I can tell you that their customer service, their phone service is excellent, so you get your bill with you, with your bill number, you call them up and they'll deal with you really quickly. I've had very good experience with their customer service so far.
Yeah, I guess, that language to me, like product elections, I don't know what that means. If I'm just looking at, of course I do know what that means, but
Yeah.
I don't think I think you need a bullet point. Opt out from community power, 1, 2, 3. Opt into community power, 1, 2, 3. Like, just bullet points. Call this number, give them your account number, and tell them you want to opt out, or whatever the 3 steps are. I think it has to be super black and white, so that people don't feel like they're having to put a lot of work into it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you bringing it to us, though.
Absolutely, no, it's not happy news, but that's the way things go, and what's concerning to me is that our Public Utilities Commission, which is supposed to be regulating monopolies, which our utilities are, they're regulated monopolies, are allowing our utilities to do what is really unfair practices, that's anti-competitive, and in a state like New Hampshire, just feels like completely wrong, and so it's quite frustrating. So that's why I wanted to bring that, and the proposed legislation, that's actually being supported by the Speaker of the House as well, so it's got bipartisan support. I think that it would be helpful if they can hear from elected officials and communities that people don't like that anti-competitive behavior on the part of the Public Utilities Commission either.
I'd kind of like to see the House bill
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
before we,
Okay.
before we, yeah.
So, I agree with I agree with that, but if our utilities don't make money, like obviously for a month or 6 months it may not make a difference, but if they consistently lose money for a year or 2 years, they will go out of business like another business. So then, like Eversource, they not only supply us with the power, but they maintain the lines and maintain
Right.
the service.
Yeah.
So if Eversource, or maybe not Eversource, but a co-op, or if Unitil goes out of business, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't like the idea of Eversource because they're a huge monopoly that makes a lot of money off of us, but
So the way the regulated utilities make money is when they buy toys. So they put up new poles, they string new wires, they make infrastructure improvements. They're guaranteed a 10% profit on every piece of equipment upgrade that they do or expansion of the system. That's the business model that utilities have. They have a guaranteed business model of a 10% profit. It's not that high in other parts of the state. Our consumer advocate in New Hampshire argues that it should be closer to 8%, that's more in line with the national average. Here in New Hampshire, they make a pretty hefty profit on the part of the business that they control. energy costs are, they're going out to the market, they're spending money to procure energy, and then they pass that on to consumers. So it's just a complete pass-through. It's not part of their business model in terms of profits. But what the PUC has done now has said, oh, but if you lose money because now you're taking risks on the spot market, you can go ahead and recover your costs, not only from your customers, but from the community power customers over here who aren't buying electricity from you in the first place. And that's unfair. That's shifting a cost from Eversource customers that have stayed with Eversource onto the rest of us who've opted to go with community power, and it's just wrong. So, I can get you the bill. I can get you a cheat sheet on the bill probably, because as you know, with all bill language, it's like, I spend a lot of time doing this stuff and I
Yeah.
don't even understand it, so.
Yeah. But it's not something we have to vote on tonight.
No,
Okay,
yeah, I think we should look at it a little more. I mean, we probably agree with you, but we just want to see it.
okay,
Thanks.
and, yep, all right, thank you.
Thanks for the updates.
Yes, Becky?
I have a question, because I just pulled up the community power rates for February 1st to July 31st, 2025. And it says that the Granite Basic, which is the default power option, is 8.9 cents per kilowatt.
Yeah, they clearly haven't updated it. The board decision was January 31st. So for the month of February, it will be 8.9 cents. But starting March 3rd, it's going to go up to 9.7 cents per kilowatt hour.
Well, Eversource right now is running at 10.5 cents, so,
And they're coming down.
okay. And was community power gonna notify if you hadn't come here, how would anybody that's on community power know the rate was changing?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Other than to look at your electric bill?
Yeah, I can tell you that member communities who were on the call with the Community Power Coalition Board were expressing the same level of concern that I'm expressing and I'm hearing from you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in tonight. Moving on to traffic committee update with Leanne.
So, we met, the traffic safety committee met on last Thursday because it was their scheduled meeting, but we started off the agenda with some new news that we had gotten from DOT, which is that they've announced that they're doing, in fiscal year 25, they're doing an entire engineering safety study from Wakefield to Conway along Route 16. And because the Traffic Safety Committee's charter was tasking them with coming up with a 10-year plan proposal for DOT, which is in essence an engineered safety study for a particular section or series of concerns, the committee decided to indefinitely table the charter and for right now disband the committee, because it doesn't make any sense for people to put a lot of hours into writing a complicated DOT grant application for a section of road that they're already going to be doing the same kind of work on. First of all, because they're already going to be doing the same kind of work, and they already have their vision for that, collecting safety data and coming up with mitigation for it. And it would be really unlikely that we would be awarded that grant, because it's a really competitive grant process with plenty of other places in the region that have traffic issues that DOT could fund, and that they're not actually looking at the same time. So I misspoke. They voted to recommend to the select board that we table this indefinitely. And the reason they said table it indefinitely instead of cancel it all entirely is because when DOT finishes that study of the corridor from Wakefield to Conway, and they come up with their plan, if it's missing something that we feel strongly about for that Chicoroa section, we can always revisit this and reconstitute the committee. But for now, they're recommending an indefinite table, and they have also recommended that we disband that configuration of the traffic safety committee. So I'm gonna need a motion for that, and then I'll tell you about the next phase once we get this part
So
taken
are
care
we
of.
disbanding the traffic safety committee as a whole right now?
Because the committee, remember, was only constituted under that specific charter. It wasn't like a thing just to deal with all traffic, it was a committee to deal with this problem. So what we've been saying all along is, they were focusing on that one area and that one issue, and that when they were done, because they signed up for that one issue, not necessarily traffic in general, that committee would disband after they did their work, and that when we look at the next kind of traffic issues in town, we would go through the process all over again of having a brainstorming session, inviting people to participate, creating a new charter. So it could be a completely different group of people based on whatever the next issue is.
Okay. Is there a motion?
You wanna just disband the,
Table the charter, the Takarawa Traffic Safety Commission charter indefinitely, and accept the disbanding of the committee as constituted.
okay, so I move to
Do that.
do that.
Sorry, Emily.
Oh, yeah, good
that
thinking.
painful,
Thank God for
Emily?
Ed.
Sorry.
I'll just
Yeah.
rewatch it.
I guess I could have just moved it myself, but
I'm happy to.
yeah.
Second?
Yeah, I'll second.
I think I did,
You
but.
did.
Oh, I thought you were asking for a second.
No, I was putting the second out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I'm really mixing it up. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, roll call vote.
There, yes.
Schaefer, yes.
Prentice, yes.
Roberts, yes. 4 yes, 0 no.
So, big thanks to that committee. They went through a bunch of iterations trying to wrap their head around it. It's a really thorny, kind of complex series of issues in Socorro Village and along the lake. And so, the next thing that could be coming our way, I talked to Carl, because we have had conversations while we were wrestling with the traffic safety issues in town. We were talking about Page Hill, and then we moved to Socorro. What's come up several times in our discussions, also based on conversations with public safety, fire and rescue, the road agent, as well as citizens about the village, is traffic safety in the village. Parking is a complex issue. Pedestrian and bike traffic, complex issue. The configuration and width of the road in the village itself is substandard. The Four Corners has been, for a long time. So Carl has expressed interest. I will pass the torch. Carl has expressed interest in,
I'll lead a brainstorming group.
Yeah.
We're not gonna form a committee. Just, any interested people in, traffic issues in Tamworth Village. I don't know exactly,
we can announce later when you want to.
actually just contact me and we'll find a way to meet, talk about the issues that there are.
Yeah.
And then, if we get to a certain point, think we need town support, we can form a committee and ask the select board for this or that, but, but first it's just gonna be figuring out what the problems are and how we might approach them.
And one of the things that the Traffic Safety Committee talked a lot about is the fact that like one person might see pedestrian safety being like the most important thing. And there are grants for sidewalks and bike paths. But if you just put a new series of sidewalks and bike paths in the village, kind of willy-nilly, without looking at the big picture of all the other needs, like the Four Corners, or parking right here in this area, you could, 3 years down the road, when that becomes a crisis, have to rip up all your new sidewalks. So it really does make sense to look at things from an eagle-eye view, look at trends, look at what areas have been issues, and come up with a strategic way of looking at the whole. That's gonna maximize your ability to get funding, as well as to make something that's maintains the flavor of the village as well. So I would encourage, that's a big thing that we learned from this effort, that the next effort really looks at things not from each individual's kind of pet focus, but the problem as a whole.
Yep.
So,
We'll do that.
fantastic. Happy to pass the torch.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to library solar grant warrant article.
Yes, so we have a warrant article submitted by the library for rooftop solar. And I think you remember at our last meeting, as we were going over the warrant articles, I realized it didn't have any language saying if the grant wasn't received. Normally, warrant articles outline what happens if the grant isn't received, so.
It's number 18.
Want me to read that?
Sure.
So, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $43,782 for installing a rooftop solar energy system at the Cook Memorial Library, said amount to come from unassigned fund balance. The town may receive a municipal solar grant from the State of New Hampshire Department of Energy for the full amount of $43,782, which will be reimbursed to the town after completion of the project. The added portion of the warrant article is, if the grant is not received, the solar installation will not be done, and this warrant article will be null and void, or if the grant is not received, this project will still proceed.
Right, so that's the language we have to decide on. And I know you, Crystal and Ally are here to kind of help. I don't know if you folks have any added information.
We do.
Oh,
regarding the
okay,
grant.
that makes,
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we have two areas of concern that we want to really focus you guys on, if we can bring that. So we applied for this federal grant, and with it, you need to have a quote, and they fund the exact amount of that quote. We received the grant, we have been awarded it. That money is now in the hands of New Hampshire Department of Energy. That is confirmed. What now is, as Gabrielle was referencing, unclear is whether that money will be released and in what time. So that makes sort of coming before the town a little trickier, because it's in question whether that really will land in our hands. And since it's a reimbursement grant, you know, the worst case is that we do the work and then don't get reimbursed. The library has no interest in going ahead with this project without this grant funding. Certainly that's not something we're asking of the town at this point, at least. So we want to make sure that that's, yeah, Leanne, do you have a-
Well, I'm just gonna clarify then, so the way I was reading this yellow highlighted part is that we're deciding between those two phrases.
Yes,
So it
and
just
that's-
sounds like the library is saying, you don't want the second part, which is if the grant is not received, this project will still
I
proceed.
think there's an issue with the wording, and that it's not whether or not it's received, it's whether or not we will be reimbursed. We have been awarded the grant.
we feel it's clear to say that we've been awarded the
Yes.
grant. So it's not that we're thinking, let's raise this money and perhaps we'll get this grant. We know we have, it's tricky. It's tricky to split the hairs on that, but we have been awarded the grant, which is why we're going forward. We don't know for sure. The Department of Energy is aware that there are some changes to the agreement coming as they try to figure out what those changes are. They're
wait.
asking people to pause, and we may not know specifically what those changes are by the town meeting.
So if we say if the grant is not received, the solar installation will not be done and this warrant article will be null and void.
But you've already received the
We
grant.
have
Right.
received, that's the
Sorry to
concern
hear.
is
Yeah.
it has been
We just can't get
awarded.
it.
It's
So-
been awarded.
So if
It
the
might not
grant
be.
funding is not released, the solar installation will not be done?
There was solar
Yeah.
installation would already be complete, this is a reimbursement.
Right,
Right.
so
Oh.
we need some method
We
to
need to
know that
know.
we're gonna get reimbursed.
So it-
Before we do the project.
My question for the select board was wording of a warrant in that it has been awarded. We are seeking permission to move forward. But we won't actually move forward with having people come and do the work until it's more clear whether or not we will be reimbursed. There's a period of time here that it's not clear.
And you have no idea what the timeline is, obviously.
Well,
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't put, if the grant is not received, the project will still proceed.
Right.
No, that should not
That's,
be.
we wanna be clear that we're not
Okay.
asking that at
No.
the time. If you guys want to, if you feel like just throwing that out there, sure, but that's not our recommendation.
Has the
Yeah.
DOE said how they'll alert us, or is it just gonna be this amorphous, set us a receipt and we'll see if we pay it?
No,
kind
no,
of
no,
thing?
it's a conversation, they've
Okay.
been reaching out to the grant recipients and.
Yes, they've
Yeah.
been forthcoming with the information they have and also forthcoming with, they don't yet know the full details.
Could you say something like, unless there's a confirmed assurance of reimbursement, the
The work,
project
yeah,
will go
the
forward?
work.
Henry, we have a question from.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's.
I would check with DRA, because it's just like the fire department, I'll give you the hazardous mitigation, they approved the grant, you had it, but you didn't receive it for almost a year. So I would just say that if the grant is received, the project will go forward. You said you've been awarded the grant, you just don't know how the payment's gonna be.
But if we don't get paid for 5 years,
It's still been an awarded grant,
but we also don't know if
You don't
the
get the funds until the work is done.
the federal grants could be nullified.
But what I'm saying is, it's like the radios or the scuba gear, you put it in, and if you don't receive it, then it's a dead article until the following year. Then you re-put it in, it's just like replacing it each year.
So you're saying proceed with the work though? Like the town should invest the
Well,
$42,000?
she just said they're not going to proceed until they're sure they're getting the money.
But you can't be sure you're getting the money until you do the work and submit and get reimbursed.
Yeah, it
This
is-
is
it
the
is
trick.
a-
This
I'm
is
not
the
sure
tricky
that's
part.
entirely, we're hoping that that's not the case. We're hoping that we're gonna have really a clear yes, that we can go for it. I just can't, we don't yet know what that clear yes looks like.
Right, so the warrant article should be something along the lines of that the grant has been received, but pending DOE's approval to move forward.
Yes, yeah.
I don't
Work
think
will
you
not.
can do that.
I'll ask the DRA.
Yeah.
It's, warrant articles are supposed to really be spelled out, like this is where the money's coming from and this
Yeah.
is the project it's going to.
Right.
And it's really hard, especially with these types of warrant articles, when you're saying it's non-lapsing until next year, because depending on when the work gets done, right, prices can increase.
That's the second
So
part
the
of that.
second part that we do want to address with you, we, in order to apply for the grant, needed a quote. This is the exact quote, and they fund exactly that amount. But we would really encourage strongly and ask that the select board waive the bidding process, make a contract with the person that we receive that quote from, with, of course, the clause that this work may not go forward depending on funding, so that we have the exact numbers, because it is entirely possible that by the time we get to do this work, that number is up, but we only have the 43,782.
And the contractor will
He's willing
honor
to do
that 2 years from now?
They have confirmed that
They will?
that
They
quote
have
is
confirmed
valid
that
as
they
of now.
need from the select board a contract, but that they would be, that they're open to.
But how long were they guaranteed a quote for?
That would be a conversation to have with them. But if we could have a firm number to bring to the town, because the other challenge would be that we have been awarded this amount from the town and awarded this amount from the grant, but it's not sufficient to cover the project. So-
When does this wording have to be locked in? Thursday?
Thursday, so, but by town meeting, if we had that contract, we could stand up and amend it.
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
yeah, you can always amend
Okay.
something, you know, on the floor, I feel.
It's not our favorite item,
Yeah.
but I think it would.
We really
it
did a
would
lot
be-
of work to not have to get to that point, but here we are.
There has to be a lot of other towns going through this exact same thing.
I'm
Oh,
sure
it's gonna be
every
nice.
town is going
Do
through
we
this.
have other wording or warrant articles from other towns that,
They're probably all drafting them today,
DRA.
like we are.
Yeah,
I mean, this was the wording recommended by our attorney.
okay.
And,
But there's
but the
no-
wording's
but the
wrong,
wording's-
cause we've already
It's
received the grant.
inaccurate.
Yeah,
and I know, I'm understanding now that,
yeah.
you know, with it still being a reimbursement grant.
How about if you change the wording to this? The second sentence where it says the town may receive. What if it says the town has been awarded a municipal solar grant, blah, 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 completion of the project, and then where it's yellow, go into, unless there's a confirmed assurance from
The Department of Energy.
DOE that awarded funds will be released, the solar installation will not be done and this warrant article will be null and void.
Okay, is there a deadline or like?
Well, then you can keep the rest of it about the non-lapsing.
Yeah, the rest of it is,
Blah,
I
blah, blah.
think, fine.
Okay, so this is getting paid for from the unassigned fund balance.
Right.
Which is another, okay.
I would talk to DRA and see
Yeah.
how they want you to write it,
Yeah,
because that
it's
is
messy.
even more convoluted than the one regarding the transfer
Yeah.
station.
But, and so that money would have to go back into the unassigned fund balance, right?
well, it's never gonna leave until,
Till we know what could be, it's gonna be reimbursed, but that reimbursement.
No, but I'm
will
just
go back
saying,
to
if
the
we're paying for it from unassigned fund balance, if all goes well and the money's released,
Oh,
we
yeah,
pay
yeah.
for it from unassigned fund balance, we
Yeah.
get the check and it's gotta go back in the unassigned fund
Right.
balance.
right,
So the unassigned fund balance goes bloop and then right back up.
Correct.
So, but
It's
if we
almost-
do, if we do this, we're the ones making the decision whether we move forward with the project anyway, right? I mean, it's not, or is it up to the library?
Isn't it?
The library board
I
has
haven't
already
thought too.
approved it.
So it's up to the town.
If the town votes
It's up to
this,
town.
But like,
but
I know.
no, if the town votes for this, who makes the decision to actually expend the money?
That's,
DOT,
well, it sounds like it would be on the wording of
I mean,
the
the
warrant
DOE.
article.
DOE, sorry,
The other
No,
one.
no, no,
When
Yeah,
the
the
library can do it.
no, the library
would be the
would
ones-
be in charge of the
Right.
project, but they can only be in charge, they can only go ahead if they've gotten a guaranteed assurance that DOE is
Correct.
gonna give them the money.
I
And
feel
it's not
like,
actually true, I think the select board is the one making the contract.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yes,
Now,
Becky?
Emily's got a point first, I'm gonna let her.
so I feel like the cleanest way to do it would to be establish an expendable trust fund with unassigned fund balance money that goes right in there, and that's why the taxpayers are holding on to it until the grant is received.
well,
The
assured.
grant is received.
It's not received. it's
The
not-
funds have been released.
Right,
Yeah, the grant, so that, the grant has already been awarded.
Go ahead, what,
It's just not
I
the
was just gonna
funds.
say, the easiest way to do it is to say you're going to do this project, from the unassigned fund balance, right?
And then if we
Sounds
don't,
And
if the
then,
funds.
if they get the funds released, you guys will determine when those unassigned fund balance funds can go to start the project.
That's what I was wondering.
Once those funds get released, they hand you a check, you hold a public hearing and say,
Yeah,
we're
smart.
accepting
Yep.
Unanticipated.
unanticipated
Unanticipated
income.
funds.
Then you don't have to worry about trying to explain to people about if we get it, it's gonna go ahead, if we don't get it, it's not gonna go ahead. If
And
you
the
just put it in from the unassigned fund balance, then
Bless
the
you.
selectmen will be able to get all their information they need and say, yes, we've got the check in hand, then you accept it as a,
And the only difference with that is that commits $42,000 of tax money, or
Right.
$43,000 of tax money that we're not committing right now under this.
But we would, it
But
would
you
be our
don't have
decision
to
to
release
actually
it.
spend it.
That's what I'm
right, you don't actually
wouldn't
have to
have to
spend
spend
that money until you know for certain your reimbursement's coming.
Even though the town would vote to spend that money,
Right.
we wouldn't have to unless we,
Well,
And
Is it-
then
is
you would
this-
get
Are you
unanticipated
raising
funds
the
from
money from taxation or are you?
No,
No,
it'd
it's
be-
not,
Okay.
it's already, it's in the
Okay.
unassigned fund
That
balance.
to me is the cleanest way, is that
Mm.
you say,
Yeah.
we're putting the money in there from unassigned fund balance, and it's your
Probably
responsibility
not
to
a
say
bad
yes or no,
Also-
once they say to you, we got the check in hand. Then
Yeah.
you hold a
Yeah,
Yeah,
public
however it
hearing
gets done.
that you're getting unanticipated income to the tune of 14,000 or 43,000 or whatever.
So we're
Thank you.
not actually asking the public to
Approve the project,
approve the funding.
right.
We're not asking town meeting to approve the funding.
No, we are, because they have to, it has to be
I
a
mean,
separate.
okay, we're not raising it from
Right.
taxation.
Right, that's right.
Yes.
It's not
That's
being
right.
raised in taxation, but
Right.
you, I mean, unassigned fund balance money is still, you know,
Tax
tax
dollars.
dollars,
Yeah.
so
Okay,
it's,
so they, yeah, it has to be approved at town meeting.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So then you're just gonna,
Well,
you're
but-
saying just keep that first sentence and that's
But
the
it would be
article.
approved in your
Yeah,
budget hearing.
the
at town
contention
meeting
was the
without a
addition, which
separate
was,
article.
I feel misleading, so that needed to be stricken or rewritten.
So yes, we would just keep the first sentence and we would just vote.
No, it would have to be categorized as voted from fund balance, which,
Yeah, that's the
Right,
first
but you
sentence.
just add it to the fund
Just
balance
leave it.
thing, that's all you would do, is you're authorizing the 43 whatever.
Said
for the
amount
fund
to come
balance
from
for
the
a solar
unassigned fund
project at the
balance.
library.
So yeah,
I mean, it's
So you
all-
read the, so we need the first sentence and the last sentence.
Okay.
And
do
we,
you-
I think we do need to mention the grant, though, I think.
No, we don't,
If-
because what Becky's saying is, so select board, if, the only way we can spend money that hasn't gone through this process, if it's over, what is it, $5,000?
Yes.
And
10,000?
For a
If
public
it's over
hearing.
$10,000, is to have a public hearing and say, hey, we just got this money, we're gonna spend it for this, because this grant just came in. The library just did that last year for something else, right? So, we can do that, we don't have to think about it ahead of time.
Okay,
If the money comes to us, great. What we're saying though is that,
you would wanna explain it at town meeting, saying we put this in here,
right,
we have a grant, we know we've got it, but when the funds are gonna be released, we don't
We don't
know,
know.
so we're gonna
Yeah.
accept it as unanticipated income.
Right, but I'm just saying this can be voted down, this is its own
Yes.
separate warrant
Yeah,
article.
yeah,
And, right, and if we're not showing that there's any grant offsetting it,
we just.
that's
get a-
why I
think-
wanted to mention the grant, I felt like
Right.
as a taxpayer myself, I don't know what
But we
unallocated.
would-
To me, it's like, oh, is that part of the budget? I
Can
don't
we
know.
write
We
in
would
that this select,
explain that at town meeting, somebody
Yes.
would
can we write that in?
explain this. I don't
That the
think we
select
can.
board won't spend these funds unless the.
I don't-
grant
That's what I'm
is-
wondering
Yes,
about, do you need to
right.
somehow say, reassure the public?
I don't know, I'm just
I
asking.
would just say it, because no offense, you don't have to spend any funds in your budget.
True.
right.
So-
I think when you, I think these warrant articles are so intensely confusing to everybody that it's cleaner if you just say the first sentence and the last sentence, the library representative stands up and
Yeah.
explains it, whichever one on the select board, Carl, then explains it from the select board point of
Okay.
view, and all that detail, instead of embedding it in a warrant article, just gets explained
That's
from the
gonna be cleaner.
floor.
That's fine.
And I think we're all on the same page as far as, you know,
Yeah.
we don't wanna spend the money without the grant.
We
Right.
don't either.
Yeah,
Right.
That
so
wasn't
I
what
think
the-
if,
My point's just being clear to the public.
yeah, and
Yeah.
But I think we just do that
Yeah.
with our
Sure.
notes
And
and
it
it's
saves you a
acceptable.
lot.
and it's clean as
Okay.
far as the warrant article
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So what was just decided?
We're gonna use sentence one,
well, it's,
the last sentence
It's one
in
and
the
two,
article.
isn't it?
No, it's not two, we're
No.
not gonna
Oh.
mention the grant.
oh, we're not mentioning the grant,
Right.
good.
We're gonna say, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $43,782 for installing a rooftop solar energy system, Cook Memorial Library, said
Said
amount to come
amount to
from unassigned fund balance,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
This special warrant article shall be non-lapsing appropriation, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Then the library stands up and is recognized and explains it, then Carl, as the select board rep, explains our point of view, and that we're not gonna spend the money unless a grant comes in.
Yeah.
You explain the grant, you've already got the grant, we don't know when the funding's gonna come, you tell people we're not gonna spend the money, it's clean.
Great, and then when you're able, you'll try to lock down a contract,
Right.
and that may alter the total that we're asking for.
Yes.
Because if we only have 43,782, the library budget itself has not built in any cushion to this.
So we locked out a contract,
We
I
don't
don't,
have it yet.
We don't have it, so, I mean, at this point, at this late date, we can only ask for 43,782,
Unless they
unless
got
you
to
amend
amend
it
it.
from the floor.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
I can tell you that they did confirm that number, Mary confirmed with the contractor that that was the number
Okay,
as of today.
so we get a contract before, but if we,
We can't enter into a contract
yeah, if
for it
we
before
sign a
town meeting, though.
contract, then, wouldn't we we have to do it regardless, or would the
Yeah,
contract
I
say?
think I think the contractor was saying you can enter into it with the clause that if the funding
escape
is not,
clause.
yeah, with an
If it's
escape
not
clause.
approved, then it doesn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
But we'd have to approve not bidding, putting it out to a bid process.
That's correct.
Oh, that's the part we're asking
Yes.
about, okay.
And was it formally put out to a bid process, and this was the only recipient or
No,
respondent?
we received two,
Okay.
and one was significantly higher,
Gotcha.
so this is the one that the grant was written for.
So it has been through a bid process,
Right.
just not the three.
That's right.
I think so, I'm not sure
Well, I
if
mean,
it
if
was a
you
formal bid process, but we did receive two numbers.
Yeah, they just got quotes, they didn't put up to bid.
Exactly,
Okay.
thank you,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Which you guys would need to motion to override our purchasing policy.
Yeah.
That's what,
well, in
You're
this day and
asking
age, we've done that a lot, it seems like.
I mean, should we review the contract before we agree to
Yeah,
sign it?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what can we do tonight?
nothing, but do you guys,
Yeah.
can you guys send me the contract?
Yeah.
And then I'll make sure you all have a copy of it and you could do this at the budget hearing.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I will be there too, so.
You just go into a regular meeting after your budget meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much, everyone.
well, thanks for putting the work in for it.
Thank you for
Mary.
coming in tonight.
Thanks, Mary.
Yes, Mary is a star.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on to old business, police department budget discussion continued.
Can I ask you a question before we do that?
Sure.
I know, I'm just looking at the way the agenda is, and sorry I didn't look at it before I got here tonight. So we do have the police department, that was one of the numbers that got brought up as a question last week, but there are other numbers too, and I thought we were gonna clarify all of those
Oh, we can, sure. I mean,
tonight too.
oh, you have some more questions? Sure.
Yeah, I thought this was like more tidying up, not just the police one.
Oh, I thought, I'm sorry, I was in the, everything we called out in the last meeting, well, I found answers to and sent those to you guys, but I didn't know we were gonna discuss those again before the budget hearing. I thought this was the only
Yeah.
piece of the budget that you wanted to.
No, I think, I mean, my impression was, we had people here who asked questions, we had a lot of conversation, and there were some things that came up and we got answers to, and that it would be good to share those answers now to maybe streamline Wednesday night, which we
Sure.
can clarify now.
We can do that.
And the police is, that's one of them.
Okay. Let me just pull up my notes.
This is that's an updated one,
Oh.
that's got the new tweaks in it.
Okay, so would you like me to just kind of go over the questions we had from last time and give some brief updates?
That would be
And you guys
great.
can chime in?
Emily,
Okay.
I think.
Becky, at our last meeting, you had asked me about the retirement obligations. So I wanted to clarify that the retirement obligations were expended from the transfer station line and then received as a revenue from the capital reserves. And then our finance manager did a journal entry. So she booked those funds from the revenues back to the line, which is why you were saying you weren't seeing an overspent line and we weren't seeing a revenue, and I thought that was a mistake on our software's end, so I put in the revenue. So anyway, I took the revenue out and it's just shown in the, it's booked to the transfer station salary line. Whether that's the way we should do it moving forward, we're gonna be checking with the auditors. It was kind of, the computer was smarter than we were because it knew to do that. But I don't know that I like seeing it that way when we run reports. I would rather see the salary line overspent and see the revenues from the reserves.
So you put it out, you took it out of the salary line instead of the retirement line?
out of, because it's, well, so the way that Elaine explained it to me, when we write, it's payroll check, and it has to be written from the salary line because it calculates the,
Holidays, vacations, that-
Right.
thank you.
okay. So I'm gonna follow up on that,
Okay.
because I still have a question.
Sure.
I would like to know the procedure for pulling out of that fund. And the reason I say that, again, is because the town administrator's salary line had $6,800 left in it at the end of the year. And the transfer station had $45,000 left in it at the end of the year. The whole, and it's a bottom line budget. So now we're going back to raise another $15,000 out of taxpayers' dollars when you literally put $51,000 back in the general fund because those two departments weren't overspent.
So you're saying,
I'm asking, as I explained to Emily,
Yeah,
I'm used to having funds or line item transfers. But it only happens when you know in that line, you don't have enough money to carry you through the end of the year. So where these two, where the payouts were, and then I don't know where the payouts were, I know transfer was one. Where the bottom line of those departments still had money in them, is going back into the general, the undesignated fund balance to the tune of $51,000. But now here we are having to raise $15,000 from taxes to replenish that fund. Whereas if you could have paid them until you saw how close you were getting at the end of the year, you wouldn't have had to touch that $15,000.
right, but I don't know, how do you do that, Becky, though, when, you know, when somebody retires halfway through the year, and, but yet your intentions are to fill that position with the same, you know, the same salary, how do you?
So what I'm saying is, so let's use the transfer station. You pay that position that's retiring.
right.
You pay someone else coming in. Come November, you go, oh gosh, we're gonna be $15,000 short in payroll costs because we paid out of that for retirement. Then you go to your retirement thing and say, I have to replenish.
Right, which is why I was saying I'd rather see that line overspent and then pull the revenue.
Right,
When-
because now you had two departments that had $51,000 that were dumping in the undesignated fund balance.
Yeah.
And we're raising $15,000 from taxes, which if we had spent it and overspent it and moved it in those departments, we would have never taken out the $15,000.
Yeah, well,
What's
it's a good point, but, and, yeah, it's on my to-do list
Because
to chat
otherwise,
with the
you're
auditors.
losing interest in everything, you're gonna be constantly
It's a warrant item.
raising more tax money to put in that thing, and yet dumping, you know, hundreds of thousands back in your undesignated
Yeah,
fund
so
balance.
you're just saying, we need a clear protocol that explains when. Yeah.
Right, since we're a bottom line budget, it's
Yeah.
silly to be raising more tax dollars
Yeah.
to replenish a fund when we would have never been overspent.
Right,
Yeah, I
That's
get
all
what
I'm
you're saying.
saying.
Yeah, that
and
makes
the
sense.
closer you get towards the end of the year, you might say, oh, God, we're not gonna make payroll, so we're gonna have to go
Right.
because we paid out retirement.
Yeah. No, I think it's
Rather
a,
than keep raising it
yeah, it's a
every
good,
year.
it's a good point. Okay, anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay, your next question to me last week was about the meals line for the elections. I increased that from 200 to 400. I think that's a good idea. You asked me about the internet services, or I'm sorry, Mr. Debitetto asked me about that. You said software support actuals came in under budget, and why are internet services so high? It was because our payroll, we moved that over to MTS, which was a $7,500 increase, and that was why. You asked me about the water and sewer line for the town office building. Is TC&A paying for their own water and sewer? TC&A did install their own private septic, so they're on their own sewer line. However, they are still tied onto our water meter. But if you look at the actuals year over year, it's a really minimal increase. So, and I think as landlords, I don't know what our lease says. I didn't have time to read through it, but I don't know if we're responsible for their water. But it was like $50 for year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Becky, you had asked me about the gas being in the rec budget. I think that was just an oversight, so I added that $800 back to that line.
Okay.
You asked me to check on property liability insurance. I did. It's correct. It's $71,619 this year. And Primex confirmed that because the donated land doesn't have any substantial buildings on it, it'll be a minimal increase to our premium.
Okay, thank you.
And then we got to public safety budget. I was asked if there was a 3% COLA increase already applied to the police department wages. It turns out that the increases were awarded back in August to the animal control wage. So Elaine and I are working on, if it's been a very fuzzy year as far as policy goes, like who received what increases when.
Mm-hmm.
So Elaine and I did catch some mistakes. So the animal control wage, and I think that was the only one though, as far as police department goes.
That received a COLA?
Please.
Yeah, that already
No, it
had
was a wage adjustment.
a wage adjustment, right? So Elaine and I will go back and work on that. Becky had asked about the detail revenue and if it covers the pay rate. I spoke with the chief and he said that we charge $75 an hour for our detail rate, so that should cover the officer on duty.
That was the other wage adjustment that was done in August.
Oh, thank you. Yes. That is
Non-scheduled.
Thank you, non-scheduled.
Non-scheduled part-time was increased to $30.
Right, so
Right.
that did in August, so that did not need another 3% on there. So we're gonna adjust that. Any questions so far? Sorry, we're going fast.
No, it's good.
That's good.
Okay. Schaefer had asked me about the fire department office supplies line. So the chief had budgeted for a new computer back in 2024, but we ended up replacing that using we had ordered, right when I started in December, they were delivering like 5 new computers. One of them was intended for Kim's office, but she didn't need the upgrade. I don't know if that was just a miscommunication. So it went down to the next, whoever's computer was up to be replaced, and that was the fire chief's. So he didn't end up needing to spend his line on a new computer. But he did tell me that he was planning on getting a laptop. So we reduced the supplies line from 5,000 down to 1,000. So that he can get some supplies and a new laptop this year.
Is there a reason we don't keep all tech
In one,
in one budget
Yeah.
instead of spraying it across the different departments?
I mean, being handed this budget,
Fair.
kind of doing what I could this year, but I think moving forward, it probably makes sense to, just like we do with the flexible spending account, we keep everything, all the departments in one line for town admin.
Right.
It might be best to do that.
well, especially if you're working on a schedule that includes all the departments.
Yeah. Okay, and dry hydrants, I still couldn't really wrap my head around this. Henry, maybe you can explain. But they said that depending on the hydrant and the equipment and materials needed, it varies, and sometimes the expense of the dry hydrant or a portion of the expense is tagged to like a maintenance line, or I don't know if there's construction or what, but he said he could explain more in person at the budget hearing too, as far as dry hydrants go.
I don't remember that question.
You don't? Well, there was 4,500 budgeted last year, none spent, and then another 4,500 budgeted this year.
Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
then I had said that I had thought that they like try to install one or replace one every year.
Yeah,
And I think that's why they budget that every year, but maybe for some reason the last year or two they weren't able to or it didn't work
Yeah.
out schedule-wise.
Yeah, and since we don't have 23 proposed, we don't know.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay,
Totally missed that. The other one was training for fire? That was a question.
training for fire.
And the answer.
Oh, yes, thank you, you
That
had
it was
the-
$5,000 budgeted and only 644 spent, and it's 5,000 budgeted again. And what Jim said about that is that the trainings aren't always offered, or people can't always go to them when they are offered, but they're about $1,000 per person, and it's invaluable training with latest safety practices, latest equipment, stuff that you want people to know when they're coming to your burning house. But, you know, it does raise a question, if we're talking about tweaking the budget, about not putting things that are so variable as their ability to access it. You know, like if they're not offering trainings, you can't spend the money. But could the town, for all town employees, everybody's got their own training and class and whatever line item, could those be collected into one line? So that whether it's the planning board wanting to go to a workshop or the firefighters, then it's just in yet another expendable trust. It seems like we're doing a lot of it, but they're good tools to not keep on raising money that gets thrown back into the unassigned fund balance.
Yeah.
I like that idea of it, but would it make it tougher to budget? You know, I mean, is there a big, like, could one year we be spending $10,000 and then one year we be spending
No.
$50,000
Yeah.
or vice, you know, 0 to,
Yeah,
you know, is there a huge fluctuation?
no idea. But you could probably figure it out with a little research, go back 5 years, look at all the training line items or the coursework line items and see what the trend has been, yeah. But that was the answer to that one.
Okay.
It's for the 26 budget.
Becky had asked me about the police department holiday buyout stipend. And the policy says, as it's written, that only full-time hourly employees are eligible for the holiday buyout. So that's why we didn't have any actuals for 2024.
And I have a question on that. I don't know when that changed, and you said you don't have a copy of the policy because in the previous personnel handbook, where now you say refer to the police department, well, the police department, I went back and looked, and it did not say hourly employees. It said 2 floating holidays and the other 10, at that point, because we hadn't accepted the other 2 the past 2 years, the other 10 would be paid out in a stipend. So.
That's the way Dana, except it's 3 now, 3 floating and 10.
But she's saying it's only on hourly, but it didn't say hourly.
Yeah, and Dana didn't say hourly when we just talked to him.
I thought, so you were asking me why the actuals were 0.
Right, because there should have been something paid out for holidays because you have police department.
Yeah.
Okay,
I thought Dana was saying we hadn't been.
And the original proposal, when it was put in to the personnel manual, didn't say anything about an hourly
What's it
employee.
called?
It said that they had 2
Holiday
floating
buyout.
holidays and 10 would be paid out. Now she's saying it's 3 floating holidays
So we added Juneteenth.
and 10 would be paid out, so.
And you're saying a salaried employee would have been eligible? According to the policy?
According to the original policy way back in 2018, 2019.
Okay, alright.
So unless you have a copy of that.
I don't have one.
Yeah, let me ask him why he included that.
Okay. Oh, Becky had asked me about the hazardous mitigation plan and if it was grant covered, where are the revenues? It turns out this grant hasn't been received yet. So, we just got the plan done, our new emergency, management director just reviewed it and approved it. So now we're working on the next steps of getting one of those reimbursement grants.
It's like a day ago,
So
right?
the 3,000 that was paid out hasn't been received yet?
Not received yet. Nope. So we paid 3,500 out.
The grant was supposed to be for 7,500. You
Yep.
paid out 35, but you haven't received the 7,500 yet.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just finished the plan.
No,
Oh,
Yeah.
when you get the grant,
yeah.
you budget for the full amount.
Yeah.
You usually have to pay out the full amount and then
Oh.
you get a reimbursement back for the full amount. So I I asked why there was 3,500 already paid out on the hazardous mitigation. So they must have wanted a partial payment this grant.
Yeah, well, I know that we were supposed to get invoices for that last portion, the remaining 4,000, back in December. But the woman running this said that she couldn't get to the invoices yet, which is why we encumbered the 4,000. I'm just waiting for, now that the plan is finalized, I'm assuming I'll get the invoices, pay it out, and then get reimbursed for the full 7,500. That's what I'm thinking. But, any
So
other?
I'm still questioning why we're not appropriating for, I know you said it was encumbered,
Yeah,
but we don't have to appropriate it to spend it because it's been encumbered?
you don't have to appropriate encumbered funds, right? The board,
They were already
They're under-
appropriated.
They were from
Yeah.
last year.
yeah, we have a contract signed, so.
I didn't know it says you couldn't pay without an appropriation of that year, so I don't know how that goes. I would just check to make sure you don't have to appropriate it to pay out that extra 4,000.
Okay, I'll check.
I know they're encumbered, but you still need something in your budget to say you're gonna pay them. Because you didn't pay it last year. It was from last year, you appropriated 7,500 and you only paid 3,000.
Yeah. We paid 3,500 and we
But if it
encumbered
was
more.
approved last year,
We don't wanna wait.
It wasn't a multi-year,
oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
it wasn't a multi-year appropriation.
So you just say we have to,
I'm just saying
we have to-
check
we have to-
because,
spend it, not appropriating, not raise anymore.
appropriate it, but not raise it.
Oh, was it its own special warrant article?
It was a warrant article for a grant to complete the hazardous mitigation, but that doesn't make it a multi-year project grant.
I thought it was just part, okay, I didn't realize that. I thought it was just part of like the EMD's operating budget that year.
No,
No,
it's a grant coming in.
okay. All right, I'll check. All right, we already worked on the rooftop solar project. Becky, you asked me if the contingency fund is now calculated using the new budget numbers. It is now, but it's gonna change again, so. That's it. That's all the questions that I had written down from the last meeting. Unless there's more, which, who's going?
The library was looking for $95,000 more as opposed to last year. Last year, they were
Just left. Yes.
Do you have Mary's sheet? You know how Mary puts out her budget sheet of
Her-
everything that's included
Yeah, we
in
have a
there?
budget.
Well, if you,
Somebody give her the high sign to leave, hurry up, get out.
if you can look at that budget sheet, he can look and see where the stuff is.
Cook Memorial Budget.
So Mary puts out about 15 versions of her
See,
budget.
all this paper,
Yeah.
it's useful.
Makes great fires.
Which question mark? Why is it up
Why,
95?
why is it up 95?
Okay, let me look real quick.
Couldn't catch her.
No, she left.
I think she went out the front door.
Yeah, she did.
Part of it is I'm looking at their income line, grants last year, 24, actual is 29.9, their proposed is 15.9, that's their grant income. Now let's look at expenditures. Contracted services, actual was 4,300 and change, proposed is 71. I don't know what contracted services are. Equipment and furnishings went from 603, well, they approved last year 4,100, they spent 600, they're asking for 2,100 this year. Let me just print this, it's easier if you look at it.
Yeah, print it, I wanna just see if the math adds up to
Employee benefits.
95,000.
Employee benefits, they approved 14,500 and change, they spent 6,900, they're asking for 15 again. Anybody else need this?
Are they doing anything with the elevator?
What's that?
Were they doing anything with repair of the another elevator in that budget?
They're not doing anything this year.
No, I mean, why the budget would increase for next year? Did they put anything in for the elevator?
That's a good question.
Last chance, anybody else want one? Can you guys share one?
I don't want one,
Okay,
I'm
Mark?
good.
Anybody else need one?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Sure.
Now, there was discussion of it, and I'm not sure, they were gonna, it's like 25,000. It was all they were looking for the lift.
Why did you do one?
They can't even get parts for the one that's in there.
Oh, really? That's,
So long.
Emily, is there a reason there's just one line item for the library?
I
It's
don't know
not
what my
broken
notes
down
say,
like it should
don't
be?
mind them.
Because they manage their own budget.
Okay.
They have their own payroll,
Nice.
That's what I
managed
said.
by the library
Trustees.
trustees.
Gotcha.
So,
No,
similar to
no,
sewer.
just here.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, okay.
Just,
So I'm gonna look at that, but anyway, so I had one more question last week that wasn't addressed. Did you guys approach, Chief about,
Littlefield or Colcord?
oh, Littlefield?
Thank you.
I know you guys have so much going on, you can't remember. His ask to go hourly
You want this?
rather than be salary,
Yep.
and what your recommendation is on that.
So we did have a conversation with the chief, and Leanne and I sat down, and the ask was to remove the overtime cap and to go hourly, which does other things to the budget, of course, with the retirement line items and so forth. And then there was also confusion about the COLA as well as a raise totaling 7%, if I remember right.
Yep.
And I think that the main issue that I remember was that we were talking about was the 7% and the overtime cap. So we've discussed increasing the overtime cap to allow him to actually get paid for the hours that he works, and leaving him at salaried and not moving to a hourly rate. Is there anything else you wanted to?
But we're not gonna adjust the cap this year.
Right, we're not gonna change that, we're gonna
Right.
do the 7% is a culmination of him being grossly underpaid according to his peers in the area. And so it's really a wage adjustment, it's not a COLA. He salaried or surveyed the other departments, and that's what he put in for with his budget. So the intention what we talked about was presenting the wage increase, or the wage adjustment, sorry, and next year look at overtime cap removal.
If he needs it.
I did some research also,
Okay.
and as far as small town chiefs, he is, especially with his reporting people, he's at the high end
Is there
of
people that
the
work
pay
for him?
scale. Because like Madison, it's like 4 people on that force that the chief oversaw, okay? And so it all depends, it all depends on how many reporting people you have. It's him, a part-time officer, and a secretary, I don't know what her
Administrative
official
assistant.
title is. Okay, so I get that everybody wants to get paid more. But I don't think that he's being grossly underpaid for the responsibilities. And can I just throw this out there, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I had 35 guys, and I didn't get paid a whole lot more than he's getting paid. That's a lot of work. Not, I mean, I don't wanna pick on the guy. If he really needs help, I understand he wants to make more money, but if he needs help, maybe it's time to go to some outside agencies and say, hey man, I could use a hand
Sure.
here, especially during storms, or, anything where there's more work that has to be covered.
So we talked at length with Chief about that specific topic, and a couple things have come up from it, but one of the the main takeaways is that he has been reaching out to other agencies for additional assistance, between the sheriff's office and the state police barracks. The numbers that they're understaffed is getting greater and greater, staggering kind of, the number of positions that aren't filled. So trying to find additional assistance to pick up details, which are optional anyways, and we only have actually another part-timer outside the agency that will pick up most of our details for us, so he's not having to cover that. We're going to try some new things with hiring. We reviewed some of the candidates that have been coming in more detail, and I completely back Chief in his decisions to not proceed. So I completely agree. We want to get him more staffing. That's part of the reason why we don't want to up the overtime cap at this point, so that we can have more time to incentivize getting those additional bodies to reduce the workload on the chief. The other thing that he brought up is the level of work, and you're right about the salaries across the board, in that other chiefs don't get paid, like you mentioned, Madison, not a lot more per hour. What I have here for documentation is there is definitely an increase there. But the amount of work that chief has to go through for our town compared to other surrounding towns, even of similar size, is a lot. We are a very busy town, and that's one of the things that we discuss is how we can possibly support the police chief in their efforts in non-police
Right.
resources.
Exactly.
And so we definitely discussed that. There's other avenues that Leanne's been working on in regards to social services, I think. Would you classify it as social services?
Yeah, more like a social work addendum to the department to handle a lot of the calls that fire and police get are less enforcement issues, and they're more social service need issues.
Yeah.
And as with so much around us, there aren't services that are taking care of those people. And when you have calls that come in from the same people 3 times a week, every single week, that's time that's taken away from actual enforcement.
Get it 100%.
Yeah, and so departments around the country are actually looking more toward this model to bring in people who are not law enforcement officials, but have
Check on people.
yeah, and they have actual skill sets that can handle supporting and then working on prevention, so that they're not. We have a lot of repeat offenders in town.
Yeah,
And offenders is not the right word. We have a lot of people who make repeat calls and their needs aren't.
Repeat assistance calls.
Frequent flyers.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
yeah.
And to the wage point, I just wanted to look at my numbers again here. This puts Chief much closer to where Ossipee is, Madison is. There's some towns that are
Well, small, like
much higher.
Sandwich,
Absolutely. Yep.
Freedom,
Yeah.
you
The
know.
problem.
And
Yeah.
I want them to get treated fairly,
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that the trick also is that Tamworth's demographic is entirely different from Sandwich's demographic.
Right.
So the calls that the chief or any of the officers in Sandwich are getting are very unlike the calls that our department's getting.
I get it.
And so I think that Chief Littlefield has, as you say, he's got, at this moment, fewer people to manage, but the kinds of calls he's dealing with and his team is dealing with are arduous, and I would argue more complicated and more dangerous than some of the surrounding towns. Not all of them, but some of the surrounding towns, so
So,
The amount of time
it's
Chief
tricky.
puts
It's
in
tricky.
is-
You make great points, and these are points we've been having over and over again conversations, and it's really this balancing act between paying somebody so that we can keep somebody who's committed to town and meet the taxpayers' needs, but also meeting the townspeople's needs to be safe. So there's no easy answer to it. I don't see an easy answer at least, and I've been running around for a while.
so I guess we're, after talking to Chief, where are we at, what's his hope and what's our?
We discussed keeping him at
Can I look at
salary
where's this?
position, increasing him with the 7% as a wage adjustment, and
But other things changed.
taking some different outside folks, looking at how we're hiring, seeing what other options we can come up with to try to incentivize certified officers. And then next year, looking at if we had some success this year, or if not, if we need to increase the overtime cap. I believe those were what we had discussed. If that's,
Yeah, I just wanna look at it, I wanna mark the numbers, but,
while you're looking for that,
yeah, you talk for
Mark,
a minute.
another one that I wanted to point out was the average amongst all the towns that were surveyed here puts the average at 96,005 for a chief and for, so slightly below that. And I realize there's some towns that move things up quite a bit. So if we pulled out Tamworth, Conway, Moulton Borough, and Wolfboro, then it's at 92 is the average.
Right, and then he got his overtime on top of that.
Correct.
Right. Do those other towns pay overtime?
That I don't know. I assume
Because
so.
I wouldn't be adverse to considering a raise in salary, but you cut overtime, you know what I mean? It's all gonna be the same, it's gonna be the
Yeah.
same when you come at the end, you know, just to be, you know, definitely in the same ballpark as every other chief in
Yes.
the area. But once you start getting big money, there's just a lot of, like, I can't believe what the chief makes in Nashua and the chief makes in Portsmouth. As far as percentage goes, it's not a whole lot for 96,000. I mean, you can look it up,
Yes,
it's crazy.
I'm gonna move on to Becky. Yes, Becky?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not to rob Peter to pay Paul, but looking at the school budget, they appropriate $500 every year for a truant officer. They have not spent it for the last 4 years. When questioned who their truant officer is, we're told it's the Tamworth Police Department.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Truant officer,
So-
you mean like an SRO, school resource officer?
Well, I mean,
Well, because they
no.
spend a lot of time there, so has the time come to
That's a
look
truant
at that as
officer.
well?
yeah.
How much time is being spent, if they're not spending it, but they appropriate it, and it's a drop in the bucket, but they appropriate it every year, they haven't spent it for the last 4 years.
Huh,
But yet, when questioned who their truant officer is, you get told it's the Tamworth Police Department.
Are they, is that,
I don't
This is
know
the
what
first I'm
they
hearing
use their
of it.
truant officer for, but I do know that the Tamworth Police Department spends a lot of time at the school.
right,
well, and
But-
the Tamworth Police Department also spends a lot of time making house calls for children.
I mean,
Who
do
need
I
house
wanna
calls?
increase their budget? No, but they've already got part of that money budgeted in, they've never expended it, but yet when asked who the truant officer is, it's the Tamworth Police
And
Department.
what's the mechanism for getting that $500
That's-
over to us?
That's the
what I
question.
was gonna say. Or how do they activate chief to do that?
You guys need to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, he gets the calls and goes, he does those calls,
that
right?
files into the
I
truant
mean,
officer.
from a taxpayer
specifically.
point of view, we'd say if you're not gonna spend
Well,
it, you haven't spent it for the last 4 years,
What I'm saying,
don't
if they
raise
have a
it on
budget
tax
for
money
a
for
truant
the
officer
school.
and he's not submitting whatever's necessary.
I don't understand. So the job is, kids aren't in school for whatever reason, you go deal with the parents, you go deal with the kids, you get them back to school, you set up scenarios, ultimatums, whatever else. And my understanding from conversations with him is he's doing that.
Right.
So, because the school calls him and says, Carl's not in school and hasn't been here for a month.
But is there something else that needs to be done to get that?
Take it out of the school budget, because
Well,
he's
ask the
already
school
doing it.
to
Just-
offset his truancy
Yeah,
work,
just spend
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Have
it's in their budget,
They should
they
be
didn't
spending
take it out this year,
Yeah.
because it was gonna be on my
Yeah.
hand to say, if you
Or
haven't
maybe
spent it in
he-
the last 4 years, maybe you need to
Maybe
not
they're
raise
waiting
it.
for
A bill?
a bill, maybe
what I'm
they're
saying.
waiting for a report.
I don't know,
I don't
something
know.
you guys
Well-
need to, at least it's $500 more of revenue.
Yeah,
I mean, it's taking it out of one taxpayer's pocket and putting it in the other, but
well, it's already part of it, like, he's already
It's
getting
already
salary to do it, so we can
when
just
it's
let
already
that
part of
property
their
be.
budget system, it's in
Yeah.
their budget. I mean, you're just changing lines from where it's gonna be raised in taxes, but,
But we don't need to raise it twice,
Right.
no, we don't.
I mean, they
Right,
could just
I
cancel
agree.
it out, yeah.
So with that wage adjustment, is that putting him up at 90, what you said last week, 93
94.
something?
94,143.
I'm sorry?
94,143.
Now, when he goes to court, is that a special line item or that's extra pay?
Depends on what he's doing, what role
Okay, I'm
he's.
just curious.
My understanding is that, he says that the truant officer money, the schools typically use it for drug education programming. So I don't know why they call it that.
Well, it hasn't been spent, so they must not use it.
There's a prosecutorial role
Right.
that is a specific role that a lot of towns hire out.
You mean in court? Or-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He prosecutes cases.
And that's kind of like above and beyond time, that's my understanding.
There's a separate line item.
I saw the
When
prosecutor
he's
one,
Yeah.
yeah.
acting as prosecutor.
Again, I'm not picking on him, I'm
Yeah,
just,
it's,
you know.
it doesn't, it's
Are his-
all fair
are his-
questions.
See, now the police, the fire department and the,
The,
highway
I think I
department
get him as a general,
raised
Well,
no
we
red
get 'em
flags,
here,
so.
but I think I get
Yeah.
him personally.
Oh, you
Yeah.
do?
I believe.
Okay.
Well, not that there was a red flag, but
Yes, Becky?
Since we're on the police department, I do have a question on the revenue side again. Because did he not receive a couple grants for patrolling and stuff?
Yes.
Did we have them in here anywhere? Cause I didn't see them.
No, yeah, there was one grant for 6,000, something
Yeah,
that I didn't realize we received. So I have a few smaller grants that I'm bundling to accept as unanticipated funds in one.
do you, well, because isn't his, I'm gonna really tax my memory here, isn't his grant for patrolling a reimbursement and allows him to put in, I don't think it was a set amount or something, or he gets 6,000 and he has to do one patrol a month or something
There's a
like
speed
that?
enforcement grant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because don't we have to put that in here as appropriation then, under revenue?
So the only grant I knew about was
Did you
the
spend that on?
Equipment?
equipment
Did.
grant.
No, he
It was-
got one
He got the
for,
grant, he bought the
patrolling,
radar
too.
machines. and
Yeah,
there
I
was
almost
another
thought it was
one.
part of the same grant, but maybe,
There was the radar machines and then,
the
and then there was
patrolling.
also money for.
But what I'm
part of
saying is, under your grant thing in your revenue,
Yeah.
there's nothing listed there, that's.
Cause I thought we already spent that. I thought it was for last year.
For the patrolling, I thought it was going into this year, it was covered over a time
Let's
frame
ask.
because he had to do so many patrols a month, or they had to do one patrol a month to get that 6,000 or something.
Okay, so I'll have to check with the chief. I know nothing about a patrol grant. I know about a $6,000 speed equipment grant that we just got
Yeah,
that I'm going to accept as unanticipated funds because we didn't have it anticipated in 2024. So, gonna accept it in 2025. I don't know about any other police department revenue other than what's
I thought-
listed on his
I
revenue.
thought it was part of this, that patrol was part of the same
I
grant.
believe they were tied together.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll check with
Because he'll
him.
be paid for the patrolling portion of it,
Okay,
because that was a requirement, I didn't know,
Yeah,
if it was two separate grants or one grant.
Would that be considered as detail?
It wasn't in the deed. I was looking at the revenue side of it, it wasn't in anywhere on the revenue side, but if it was accepted last year as unanticipated revenue, then you don't have to put it in this year's revenue side.
Okay,
I'm just saying,
let's-
cause the special details, it's 4,000, enough part of it.
No, I think it was a. No, cause he was gonna, because we talked about, didn't we talk about having the parking guy do it? No, we didn't, cause he
No.
can't.
No, not for the speed enforcement.
Didn't the board, he came in here, didn't the board vote to an amendment to a grant?
Yes, the second time, he came in the second time because he needed something else put into it, but
Yeah,
I
that's,
don't,
aren't you talking about that?
yeah, I don't know that the two grants are tied together, the speeding equipment and then,
the patrol, I think it
Patrolling.
was tied together somehow.
It was tied together because it had the same grant number, he
Yeah.
actually said the grant number.
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'll get him to clarify.
It was for extra patrols.
and the
Yes.
speeding sign. The radar sign.
Is there other questions on the police department budget while we're here? is there a motion for the police department?
I don't think you need a motion, you would need one if you were gonna be moved to hourly.
Oh,
but
that's
since
right,
you're
okay.
not, I don't think you need anything.
So we're just keeping it in the budget as is.
And the town will just
Okay,
vote
that's
at
right.
the budget hearing.
So, is there any other budget related questions?
Yes. So because this is a wage adjustment, then he will not get a 3% on top of
He's
this.
doing the work.
Correct.
He's
Correct.
doing it
Okay.
under-
Yeah, I do have more budget questions if you wanted to field them here, or you wanna field them at the budget hearing, your
No,
choice.
we want them here.
Alright,
For yourself.
so then I have a question again, I'm gonna go back to the revenue sheet.
Okay.
I just can't.
I agree.
The EV grant.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it in there, under grants.
Well, that's because we weren't sure, I needed clarification tonight. It wasn't until I dug into that warrant article that I'm like, oh, where's the revenue coming from?
That's the only thing I had because it's not in under your grants.
So it sounds like after tonight, it's gonna be coming from the fund balance. Like revenue.
The EV for the electronic plugins,
The Chargers.
the chargers? I didn't hear it was coming.
Oh
from
my
the-
gosh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking solar.
No.
It went
Yeah.
there.
I didn't see the
Wind
EV,
this whole
I didn't
thing
see
back.
the EV grant in your grants.
Let me look.
I could have missed it. I'm working off the one you put out on the 28th. When I looked at all the grants, I didn't see the EV grant there. That's why it came up with the, you got the grant energy IMV and it says 0, so.
I think it's in with the, so some of it's from the Tamworth Foundation.
Yeah,
Oh, you looking for the breakdown,
Yeah.
or where it is?
Yeah, do you have it in your, actually, I have it in my head. Hold on, I have it in my notes. Do you have another question you wanna move forward?
so the Tamworth Foundation is the 15,600 and that's going for the EV grant?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's a portion of it, and another portion of it is in another area, but I think it's combined with other funds, so let me get you. Do you wanna go on to the next, do you
yeah.
have anything else, Becky?
but
Go ahead.
can I answer your question first, Becky, and we should make a note of this? The patrolling aspect, the grant runs from October to October. The equipment's been purchased and the patrolling is left, and that revenue for the patrolling is $1,015.
So wouldn't you have to appropriate that somewhere here in the,
Yeah,
so I put, I don't know where you put it, but I'd say under grants, cause
Yeah.
it's a grant.
Oh my gosh, this.
what's line items, grants?
Revenue.
It's under revenue,
It's,
I think it's page,
The grants are on page 4,
yeah,
under contributions and
that's
donations.
fine. Let me use this. Okay, so grant,
I think the Tamworth Foundation was 78,000.
police.
Yes, so Becky, back to the EV chargers. 15,600 coming from the Tamworth Foundation,
yeah,
and then 62,400 coming from a New Hampshire DOT grant. So that's under state grants
okay,
in state and federal revenue.
okay.
Yeah. And the
Thank you.
15,600 is in contributions and donations.
State and business, state and government.
So you have to add that 1,015 to the grant, create a grant line
No,
for
the
that.
way the
No.
DRA wants to see it is, the Tamworth Foundation is a local contribution donation, so it's under contributions and donations, I say grant Tamworth Foundation.
No, I'm saying this is the police one.
Oh,
You have to- it's not in there yet. Becky was asking about that, and Dana says there's $1,000, 1,015 left to spend on the patrolling before next October. So we have to show that as revenue here.
it's, so this is I'm sorry, it's a grant that was received?
Yeah, it's that, it's that
And
whole,
it
it's
was
that whole
part of
grant
the
we were just
equipment,
talking
you know, we
about.
got the speeding equipment.
Yep.
Part of that same grant was this money for patrolling, to catch the speeders.
Yeah,
It's for DUI and stuff.
Okay, so
Or
that'll.
DUI.
That's what it said.
Oh,
Okay.
but we're gonna spend that this year.
So it has to go in under the grant.
Right.
To be appropriate. All right, you ready for my next one?
Yeah.
I don't know what page it is, it's on. I think it's page 5. You've got the the ETFs in there, but you don't have the separation one in there. Unless, under revenue, on page 5,
Yeah.
this is the one that you had 128. Because it's sort of scrunched up, you've got UFB fire rescue
yeah.
vehicle, and then you've got ETF, town buildings, infrastructure, town equipment, which I know is going away, but you put it in that way. But you don't have your separation obligation ETF in there.
Oh. Good catch.
That's because I'm not receiving any revenue from that. I'm just putting, this year I'm putting money into that expendable trust, so I'm not taking any out.
So the reason the revenue's there is because you're taking revenue from it, and you're gonna
Yeah,
place it
these-
into the one warrant article. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right, going on.
The grant is the Office of Highway Safety. For that 1,000.
Okay. Okay.
My next one was, hang on, my computer goes up there. I hate doing this. Under government buildings, and especially with the discussion today, you dropped the electricity from 6,200 to 4,500. Not that you may not want to figure all your electricity over after what we were told.
Yeah, I chatted with Rick about this one, and he says, I said, you know, why was it so high in 2024? And he said there was a lot of construction being done on this building the last year, which is why the electricity.
Well, we know that they were tied in and stuff, but yeah, but
She said government buildings, which is 8, but I don't see that.
it struck me as odd, and especially now with what we got told tonight,
Yeah, maybe we should up that.
or look at it in all areas
Oh,
that
yeah.
have it.
Town
Maybe
office
it's under-
electricity.
We're on page 9.
Yeah, yeah, just found it, thanks.
Mine's 8.
Oh, okay.
And then on page 10, we talked about the holiday buyout, so, for the police department.
Yeah.
I know you guys have talked about the part-time firefighters, and I know they kept it at 95, but they still, by the end of the year, only spent 66,000, so
Yeah,
that's still a
and,
question.
yeah, and what,
I know they said the
Jim's-
chief needs help, I mean, I watched that.
no, what Jim said to us though in the fall when he first came in was that last year was a low forest fire year. And that if we don't have that and we have the forest fires that they expect, that was the comment, that last year there were like no forest fires.
And the chief needed help during the day, and I heard the whole thing, but they
Yeah.
still only spent 66,000. You guys have been trying to tighten up, that's all. The same thing on that, on page 11. I'm a little concerned about their vehicle repair and maintenance, because they spent 33,000 and they're only budgeting 25 again. I know they're bottom line, so they had some money left over, but they only had like a $5,000 difference, which is cutting it pretty close if you.
Yeah, so that is one thing that I think, sitting in my seat now, I'm gonna do work, as I work with department heads on their budget, because I realized, you know, it's a bottom line budget, and I think a lot of times we like just kind of take that for granted, like, you know, it's okay to be over on this line and under this line, because it's bottom line. But it is nice to be a little more accurate, so, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it's something we can definitely work on, is getting it closer to the actuals. And
Can I just say, I understand it's tough to try to predict what kind of issues are gonna come up and gonna cost you money,
Yeah.
you know? Whether it's snow, fire, or vehicle issues.
Yeah,
Well, we do know that to repair them aren't cheap
Oh,
by a long shot,
oh,
so.
yeah.
Well, right, and also with the new expendable trust fund that
That's
we're,
my,
you
that's
know,
my question. Again, what are the rules for using that expendable on purchase, repair, and stuff down
It's
at Sky?
It's supposed to be an emergency situation, so that if they budget 25,000 and something comes in at 48,000, and you have to have the fire truck on the
But
road.
again, why are you budgeting 25 when you know you spent 33 and you know it's expensive to repair unless they've got new vehicles coming in, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Why budget down if you know you spent up the previous year, because nothing's getting cheaper.
It's being tight.
That's not tight, that's,
Was there a known vehicle repair that's not
well,
gonna,
that's what
you know?
I just trying to find out
Yeah.
if,
then my next question's on page 14. I know you said you increased the LP gas because the one that, so you're gonna be posted again. Youth programs went from 7,999 to 14,300, and youth sports went from 8,600 to 3,000. Did something get swapped in those two?
I retitled lines, and
Okay.
I will have that info at the budget hearing for Jeremy, so that if people are curious, but yeah, so it's you know, youth programs used to be like children, summer trips, and then another line was like children buses, and it was just very confusing. So I retitled these lines, which is why it's not really, it's hard to compare year to year.
so you put the money into it, what you actually spent on those subcategories?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's, I'm
Yeah.
gonna say that.
Because we used to have the contract for the soccer, and that was quite expensive, is why I was wondering where that went, because you dropped one to 3,000, increased the other, so as long as you have it, I don't care.
Yeah,
Same thing with under the swim program, it went from the budget of 1,000 to 11,000, but yet you increased the rec department's bus budget up to 14, so do you think it's gonna cost you $11,000 for parking?
so we discussed it last time, the school that we normally rent our vans from for the summer.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
You increased the rec side of it from a couple thousand to 14, but you also increased the swim program from 1,000 to 11,000.
Yeah, so the total cost of the buses was actually 25,000.
Okay,
It's kind of split between what we do for summer programs for trips and field trips and camp, and then what we spend on shuttling kids to and from swim lessons 6 weeks or 8 weeks of the summer. So half of the buses is in the swim line now, and half is in the rec summer program.
So the buses, rec department's responsible for fueling the buses?
Yeah.
Okay, so that includes the fuel?
Yeah.
Oh,
It
okay.
includes
Because
the-
what are
yeah.
what is the rental for the buses for the summer?
So
Because there's
it's-
4
it's
vans.
good.
It's 4 12-passenger vans. It's $750 per van per week, which is actually the cheapest we can find.
Yeah,
Tempted. I wish we could go out and buy a big bus, but it'll probably cost us more to
I'm working on that,
take it. Oh, good. Work on
a
it.
different way.
Yeah.
Good.
So, yeah. I mean, and that's the kind of the downside is without these, it really changes the whole summer. We'd have to keep our
To give you
TSEP program.
perspective, to
At the
transport 9 students to Moltenboro from K.A. Pratt,
Mhm.
guess what, 15 miles, 30 miles
Yeah.
round trip, twice a day,
yeah.
$90,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a deal.
Jeez, I'll drive them for
Well,
9
my
grand.
point is,
You say that now.
for that price,
Really
you
mean
buy
it.
a 14-passenger van and rent it to you for the summer.
Oh, Rose
Yeah,
loves that.
smart.
Yeah.
I think outside the box a lot.
good.
The cemetery, I'll ask John, because I thought they were doing the vault, but I take it they didn't.
I was just
They didn't
looking
get
at that
anything
too.
because it says 0, and I know they were gonna talk to John, and
Well,
I knew they were talking about redoing the vault.
they have the money.
How do
So-
you have the money? It doesn't show anywhere.
So, okay, and I'll just say this real, it's gonna be so boring, but I'll make it quick. I had this same thought. I'm like, if I understand that there's a reserve, the money's already there, they're authorized as agents to expend, right? But just like every other capital reserve, it
It should
gets
show.
processed through our budget.
Yeah.
And it got very confusing, and I think the cemetery trustees ended up saying, you know what, we're not gonna do anything this year anyway. But, right,
They're not doing the vault this year?
they said they're gonna hold off.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, normally it would show in our expenses.
Okay. I think, other than one more question, what's the less offsets down at the very, very bottom on page 17? I can get the less revenues, is the offsets the encumbered?
So offsets that was voted from the fund balance in previous years.
That's what I'm saying, that's your encumbered funds, or
From the
that's
unassigned-
offset for your property tax?
From the,
No, that was what was voted from the fund balance. So like this year, we show it in revenues, all those, UFB, like our
Okay,
bridge repair, our fire vehicle, and,
Okay.
yeah. Any funds that we're using from the fund balance to kind of offset the, amount to be raised in taxes.
okay.
We used to show it at the bottom of the budget.
That was, yeah, Keats liked it that way, I think.
Yeah, and I just, when I enter things into the
Yeah.
DRA portal, it shows it as revenue, so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I put it, but.
No, it's okay, I saw it at the bottom, I couldn't compare it because there were some big numbers there, so that is from the unassigned fund balance.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so we used, last year we used 279,000, this year we're using, well, now I've gotta add the library.
Oh, yeah.
We're using about 600,000 of unassigned fund balance in our budget this year,
It's okay.
which is okay, we have a large fund, but. Mhm.
are there any other budget related questions? Hold on, here.
Oh, I have one thing missing, just meeting minutes
Yeah,
from
I
last week.
Is there any, do we have a select board update?
Oh,
Oh, boy, no.
Is there any public input? Any public input?
I would just do the suggestion that some policy be written on how these extra new funds
Yeah.
things are used, because money when I went back through, I saw no board vote. I know you sort of made the administrator your agent, but there was no board vote to take the 15,000 out and put it in for the separation obligation, but I think there should be some,
Even in non-public?
no, I didn't see it in any of your non-public minutes that were not sealed.
I can't remember doing it.
Yeah.
So that there's
No,
a
you're right, I mean, it
process.
should have a clear, there should be a clear, operating procedure for those decisions.
Yeah, normally, so with any board, like the fire wards are agents to expend from their own capital reserve, you would need a vote and then a request for the funds to be transferred.
Is there any other public input?
So where do we?
Hearing no public input, we're gonna move on to the signature file. I make a motion to approve the select board meeting minutes dated January 28th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
There, yes.
Schaefer, yes.
Yes.
Roberts, yes. 4 yes, 0 no. There's no other business to discuss. I motion to adjourn. At 6:56.
Yeah, no, I think it's good.
I always watch your videos.
It's good though, we're tweaking it down. Wednesday's gonna be smooth.
Definitely should have just skipped out. I rushed down here because I was like, oh, I gotta be
The
there.
one you put
I
on.
missed too many meetings as it is, so, I
Your
gotta be there and then.
attachment for the meet,
Appreciate
the
it.
religion,
Got a signature
whatever.
I know I
Yeah.
can,
Around?
Oh,
I
yeah,
can
sorry,
only
just
sit
hand that right
here.
back to,
When did you put the?
Is it only you signing it?
No.
Sing the
Wasn't the one
signature?
that you did last
I'm
week?
like-
Good night,
Not
everybody.
since, good
Good
night.
night,
I
thank you.
did get your
Okay.
messages
Actually,
when
hand
I,
it back.
yeah,
Did you get my
Not
text I just
since,
sent today?
yeah.
the third, I need to update it again, so
Okay, okay.
my goal